The ambulance siren cut through Chicago's midnight air like a blade through silk. Mercy General Hospital's emergency entrance doors flew open, paramedics rushing a gurney through fluorescent corridors where everything smelled of antiseptic and fear. The woman on the stretcher wore torn designer clothes soaked in crimson, her face the color of old snow. Blood pressure dropping. Internal bleeding probable. ETA to surgeon. Unknown. Victoria Chen's eyes opened just wide enough to see ceiling tiles racing past. Her mouth formed words her lungs couldn't support. Please, make it fast. I don't want the pain. The nurse gripping her hand looked panicked. De Reyes is stuck in traffic 8 minutes out. Daniel Morrison heard the commotion from 40 yards away, near the West Corridor vending machines where he had been checking doors on his nightly rounds. His security uniform was wrinkled from 6 hours of wearing it, radio clipped to his belt, flashlight heavy in his pocket. He'd worked this shift for 4 years, knew every sound the building made. This sound, chaos mixed with medical urgency, triggered something deeper than training. He ran. The ER nurses were already moving when he burst through the double doors, but their movements carried hesitation. Procedure without a doctor present meant waiting, stabilizing what could be stabilized, praying the bleeding stayed internal. Daniel's eyes swept the scene in 2 seconds. 1 patient, critical condition, 3 nurses, no physician. The math was simple. Someone had to act. His voice came out calm, steady, the voice he'd used in Kandahar when mortar rounds were falling and boys were dying. Ma'am, you're going to see the sunrise. I promise. Victoria's gaze found him through the fog of shock and pain. This man in a cheap security uniform, this stranger with graying temples and work-worn hands, spoke with absolute certainty, as if he'd made this promise before, as if he'd never broken it. Daniel stripped off his jacket, covered her shaking body for warmth. The motion exposed his right forearm under harsh lights. Black ink etched in military font. 68W, Combat Medic, 2011-2019. Numbers and letters that told a story. Victoria's fading consciousness couldn't quite grasp, but somehow understood. This wasn't just a security guard. He checked her pulse at the carotid, 2 fingers pressed with practiced precision. Weak but present, airway clear, breathing shallow, left arm bleeding through makeshift bandaging. He applied pressure with one hand, gestured with the other. I need O-negative blood, IV line, and someone checking pupil response. Now. The lead nurse hesitated. I know what I'm doing, trust me. Something in his tone made her move. Years of emergency room experience recognized command when she heard it, even from unexpected sources. Daniel's hands worked with the muscle memory of someone who'd done this in worse conditions. Triage, stabilize, keep them alive until real help arrived. The process was automatic, built into his nervous system through 3 tours in a desert where death came faster than helicopters. He locked eyes with Victoria again. Her pupils were dilating unevenly, sign of head trauma or shock. What's your name? Her lips moved. Victoria. Okay, Victoria, I'm Daniel. You were in an accident, but you're going to be fine. The doctor's on his way. Just keep breathing with me. In for 4, out for 4, match my rhythm. She tried, failed, tried again. Her hand reached out, trembling, searching for something solid in a world that had just flipped upside down. Daniel took it, held it firm. Not gentle. She didn't need gentle. She needed an anchor. While his hands moved through procedures no security guard should know, memories flickered uninvited. A checkpoint outside Jalalabad. RPG fire shredding a convoy. 23 men bleeding in sand and heat. His own blood mixing with theirs. The decision to stay, keep working, refuse evacuation until everyone who could be saved was saved. The silver cross they'd pinned on his chest felt heavier than body armor. He pushed the thoughts away. Focused on Victoria's breathing, her pulse, the way color was slowly returning to her cheeks. 7 minutes since she'd arrived. Burst through doors in the distance, white coat flying behind him, already assessing the scene. The doctor's eyes went to the monitors, to Victoria, to Daniel, then back to the monitors. Numbers that made sense. Vitals stabilizing. Professional work. You did this? Daniel stepped back, making room. Just kept her steady, Doc. Darius moved into position, hands already working, but his gaze lingered on Daniel for 3 seconds too long. You saved her life. Daniel didn't respond. He was already walking toward the hallway, toward shadows, back to the invisible world where security guards belonged. Victoria's voice, barely audible, followed him. Thank you. He nodded without turning around. Just another night. Just another life. Emma would be waiting in the cafeteria with her math homework and her drawings of superheroes. Time to go check on her. The hospital cafeteria at 12:30 in the morning held the particular loneliness of places meant for crowds but occupied by one. Emma Morrison sat at a corner table, third-grade math workbook open, colored pencils scattered like rainbow shrapnel. She was drawing in the margins again. Her teacher had asked her to stop, but Emma couldn't help it. Pictures made more sense than numbers sometimes. Tonight's drawing showed a stick figure, man with a star on his chest, one hand reaching toward a stick figure woman lying down. Labels in careful print. Dad, lady from TV. Miss Paula, the night shift nurse who brought Emma hot chocolate 3 times a week, set a steaming cup beside the workbook. Your daddy working hard tonight, sweetie? Emma looked up, smiled the way 8-year-olds smile when they're trying to be grown up. He's always working hard. That's what heroes do. She meant it. Emma had decided at age 5 that her father was a superhero in disguise, which explained why he wore a uniform and disappeared into the hospital every night while other kids' dads stayed home. The other kids didn't understand. Their dads had normal jobs, 9-to-5 jobs, jobs that didn't require waiting in hospital cafeterias until dawn broke over Lake Michigan. But Emma understood, sort of. She understood Dad was helping people. She understood Mom wasn't coming back. She understood that adults sometimes lied when they said everything would be okay. But Dad never lied, which meant when he said he'd come home, he would. Still, the anxiety lived in her chest like a small cold stone. 12:35 now. Dad usually texted at 12:30. She pulled out her phone, the basic model Jake's wife Rosa had given her for emergencies, and typed with 2-finger concentration. Dad, you okay? 3 minutes felt like 30. Then her phone buzzed. All good, Em. Just busy. Love you. Emma exhaled, put the phone face down on the table, went back to her drawing. The cold stone in her chest got a little smaller, but never quite disappeared. 5 years ago, almost to the day, Daniel Morrison had stood in dress uniform at Sarah's funeral, while Emma cried in his mother's arms. His daughter had been 3 years old enough to know Mommy was gone, too young to understand forever. The decision had formed in his mind during the pastor's eulogy, hardened during the 21-gun salute, became unbreakable when Emma asked him that night where he'd go next. Nowhere, baby. I'm staying right here. I promise. Leaving the Army meant leaving the only identity he'd built since age 18. Combat medic wasn't just a job, it was who he was, how he moved through the world, the filter through which he understood crisis and calm. But Emma needed stability more than he needed purpose. So he'd filed discharge papers, accepted the honorable separation, packed up their apartment at Fort Campbell, and moved back to Chicago where Sarah's sister could help with childcare. The security job at Mercy General had appeared in an online posting like a gift from a universe that owed him nothing. Night shift, steady pay, health insurance. More importantly, hours that let him be present during Emma's waking life. He slept while she was at school, picked her up at 3, helped with homework, made dinner, tucked her in, then headed to work. She'd stay with his neighbor, Mrs. Kim, until 10, when he'd bring her to the hospital cafeteria. Not ideal, but better than overseas deployments measured in months. Daniel walked the empty corridors now, flashlight beam cutting through dimness. First floor, second floor, checking doors, testing locks, looking for anything out of place. The work was mindless enough to let his brain process what had just happened. He'd gone full medic mode in the ER. Muscle memory had taken over, years of training overriding 4 years of deliberate suppression. He'd broken his own rule. Stay invisible, don't draw attention, let the past stay buried. Victoria Chen's face floated in his memory, the fear in her eyes, the way she grabbed his hand like a drowning person grabbing a rope, the coldness in her voice later. I don't like owing people. He pushed it away. Not his concern, He'd done his job. She'd live. End of story. His phone buzzed. Text from Jake Martinez. Heard you went full medic mode tonight. Coffee at 2? Daniel checked the time. 1:45. His break started in 15 minutes. He texted back. Yeah. The break room on the third floor smelled like burnt coffee and hope. Jake was already there. Maintenance uniform streaked with grease. Tattoo visible on his left forearm. Marines, Iraq, 2005, 2009. They'd bonded over the tattoos 6 months after Daniel started. That wordless recognition veterans gave each other in civilian spaces. Jake slid a Tupperware container across the table. Tamales, Rosa's specialty. She says Emma's too skinny. Eat. Daniel popped the lid, smiled despite himself. Tell Rosa she's a saint. They ate in comfortable silence for a minute. Then Jake leaned back, studied Daniel with the directness that came from shared combat experience. You gonna tell me what happened with that CEO? Daniel shrugged. Not much to tell. Brother, the entire ER is talking. You stabilized a critical trauma patient like you'd done it yesterday. Nurses said you were calling out procedures, using terminology, acting like what I used to be. Jake nodded. Yeah, like what you used to be. Daniel sipped coffee that tasted like motor oil. Muscle memory. Couldn't just stand there. And now? Now nothing. She's alive. Doctor handled the rest. I go back to checking doors. Jake's expression shifted. Something between frustration and concern. Man, when you gonna let anyone in? Or you just gonna hide behind that uniform forever? I'm not hiding. You requested your military file be sealed. You work night shifts so you don't have to socialize. You haven't dated since Sarah died. Jake. The warning in Daniel's voice was clear. Jake raised both hands. Okay, just saying. You're allowed to live too, you know, not just survive. Daniel stood, threw his coffee cup away. I'm living. For Emma. That's enough. Is it? The question hung in the air between them. Daniel didn't answer because he didn't have an answer. He left the break room, went back to his rounds, tried not to think about the way Victoria Chen had looked at him when he'd said just live better, like he'd stabbed her instead of saved her. At 3 a.m., he checked on Emma one more time. She was asleep now, head pillowed on her backpack, math homework incomplete. He draped his jacket over her shoulders, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She stirred but didn't wake. This child who'd lost her mother and never complained. Who did her homework in hospital cafeterias and called it normal. Who drew pictures of heroes because she needed to believe the world had them. Daniel's throat tightened. Some wounds never stop bleeding. You just learn to walk around with them. Sunrise found Victoria Chen in a private room on Mercy General's top floor, surrounded by machines that beeped rhythms of life continuing. She woke slowly, pain radiating from ribs and arm, head pounding like drums in a war movie. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, downtown Chicago spreading out below in steel and glass in morning traffic. He'd been right. She'd seen the sunrise. The memory came in fragments. The crash. Her car spinning. That moment of absolute clarity when she knew she was about to die. Then voices, hands, someone saying words that made death pause. The tattoo on his arm. Combat medic. The way he'd held her hand with the perfect amount of pressure. Not gentle, not rough, just solid. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Rick Stevens entered, carrying a tablet and wearing the expression of a man who'd been up all night managing a crisis. Victoria's executive assistant and COO had been with her for 8 years. Knew her better than anyone, which meant he knew how to read the micro-expressions she thought she hid. Thank God you're okay. He pulled a chair close, voice dropping to the tone they use for sensitive conversations. The board is losing their minds. Media wants a statement. Shareholders are calling. Thomas Kerr has already suggested 3 times that you take medical leave. Victoria tried to sit up, winced, settled for propping herself higher on pillows. What are they saying? The media? Rick hesitated. Single car crash, no DUI, you were distracted. Questions about whether you fell asleep, whether you're handling stress, whether this is a sign of deeper issues with leadership. I swerved to avoid hitting a child on a bicycle. I believe you. The narrative is already spinning. Rick nodded. They both knew how this worked. Victoria Chen Youngest self-made billionaire in Illinois, Ice Queen CEO, finally cracks under pressure. The story wrote itself. Never mind that she'd been driving to clear her head after 17 hours of board meetings and product launches. Never mind that she'd chosen a child's life over her own safety. The narrative demanded weakness, and the media would find it. Victoria's mind circled back to something else. Rick, last night, before Dr. Reyes arrived, there was a man, security guard. He saved me. A nurse entered to check vitals, overhead the last sentence. Oh, you mean Dan Morrison? Night security. Yeah, he kept you stable until the doctor got here. Pretty impressive. Victoria focused on the nurse. Security guard? The nurse smiled, adjusting IV flow. Sweetest guy in the hospital, single dad. His daughter Emma waits for him in the cafeteria every night. He's like everyone's favorite person here. She made a note on her tablet, left. The door clicked shut. Victoria stared at where the nurse had been standing. Single dad, daughter Emma, security guard, the pieces didn't fit. That man's hands, his voice, his absolute certainty, those belonged to someone with serious medical training, not someone who checked doors for minimum wage. Rick was already pulling up employee records on his tablet. Daniel Morrison, age 38, night security, hired 4 years ago. He frowned. That's weird. What? Previous employment just says healthcare worker. No details, no references. Employment history starts 4 years ago. Before that, nothing. No LinkedIn, no social media presence. The file is minimal. Victoria's instincts kicked in, the ones that had built a tech empire from her parents' struggling import business. When something didn't add up, dig until it did. He's hiding something. Or he specifically requested privacy. Rick looked up from the screen. Want me to dig deeper? Victoria started to say yes, then stopped. Something about the way Daniel Morrison had looked at her, not impressed by her wealth, not intimidated by her position, just focused on keeping her alive, made her hesitate. No, not yet. Rick leaned back, choosing words carefully. Victoria, the nurse said he kept you stable. That's not normal security guard stuff. The way she described it, he used medical terminology, knew pressure points, stayed calm under crisis. That's professional level competence. The memory sharpened, his hands checking her pulse at the neck, not the wrist. The way he tilted her head to check airway. The commands he'd given nurses with absolute authority. That tattoo. Rick continued, voice dropping lower. If media finds out you were saved by some mystery guy and starts digging into who he really is, we should control this narrative. Get ahead of it. Victoria felt her walls going up, the ones she'd built brick by brick since childhood. Her father's voice echoed from decades past. Never let them see you need anyone. Need is weakness. Weakness is death in business. Agreed, I don't need rumors. I'll handle it. But as Rick left to manage the media storm, Victoria found herself staring out the window at a city she'd conquered through sheer force of will and wondering why Daniel Morrison's words kept playing on repeat. Just live better, like he could see straight through her designer clothes and billion-dollar net worth to the scared girl underneath who'd learned too young that vulnerability meant abandonment. Her mother had left when Victoria was 12. Couldn't handle the pressure of being married to a man who measured success in 16-hour days and measured love not at all. Victoria had watched her father's face when he'd found the note, watched him fold it carefully, put it in his desk drawer, and never speak of it again. The lesson had been clear. Emotion is weakness. Control is power. Never let anyone close enough to hurt you. She'd built Chen Industries into a tech giant using those lessons. Youngest CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Billion-dollar valuations. Partnerships with defense contractors and Silicon Valley titans. All of it achieved by maintaining perfect control, never showing vulnerability, never admitting she needed help from anyone. And now some security guard had saved her life and told her to live better. The audacity of it burned in her chest like good whiskey. By noon, Victoria had checked herself out of the hospital against doctor's orders. Rick protested. Reyes protested. She ignored them all, signed the liability waivers, and headed for the elevator on crutches because admitting she needed a wheelchair felt like surrender. That's when she saw him, Daniel Morrison was walking toward her down the corridor, end-of-shift exhaustion written in the lines around his eyes. He wore the same security uniform, same radio on his belt, but now Victoria saw details she'd missed through the fog of trauma. The way he carried himself, spine straight, head up, eyes scanning environment with practiced awareness. Military bearing, combat veteran bearing, not security guard bearing at all. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, electric and complicated. Recognition, connection, the strange intimacy of saved and savior. Daniel nodded with quiet respect, started to walk past. Victoria heard herself speak before her brain approved the words. "Wait, you're Daniel Morrison?" He stopped, turned. "Yes, ma'am." She limped closer, Rick hovering protectively behind her. This close, she could see the gray threading through Daniel's dark hair, the scar above his left eyebrow, the steadiness in his gaze that came from seeing terrible things and surviving them. "You saved my life last night." "Just did what needed to be done, ma'am. Dr. Reyes did the real work. The nurse said you kept me stable, that you knew what you were doing." Brief silence. Daniel didn't elaborate, didn't defend himself, just stood there with the patience of someone comfortable with silence. Victoria pushed. "Where did you learn that?" "Picked up some things over the years." Rick stepped forward, diplomatic smile in place, but calculation in his eyes. "Ms. Chen wanted to thank you personally. We're very grateful." Then his voice dropped, took on the careful tone of someone delivering news the recipient wouldn't like. "We're also hoping we can keep the details private, you understand." Daniel's expression didn't change. "Not sure what you mean." "Media loves a dramatic story. Billionaire saved by mystery hero. It creates questions, speculation. Ms. Chen values her privacy." Victoria added, hearing her voice come out harder than intended. "I'd prefer if you didn't discuss last night. With anyone. I don't need complications." Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her. Not at her designer hospital gown, or her expensive crutches, or the way she held herself like someone used to commanding rooms. He looked at her the way a medic looks at a patient, assessing what's really wrong beneath surface symptoms. She felt exposed, seen in a way she hadn't been seen in years. His voice came out quiet but firm. "Wasn't planning to talk about it, ma'am." Relief flooded through her. "Good. I appreciate your discretion." Awkward silence stretched between them. Victoria tried for warmth, for human connection, the skills that had never come naturally. "If there's anything I can do for you—" Daniel cut her off. "Don't need anything, ma'am." The words stung more than they should have. Victoria felt her walls going higher, defense mechanisms clicking into place. "Well, I don't like owing people." Daniel held her gaze for 3 seconds. In those seconds, Victoria saw judgment. Not harsh, not cruel, just the quiet assessment of someone who'd seen enough of the world to know what mattered and what didn't. Then he spoke, voice gentle but cutting straight to bone. "Then don't, ma'am. Just live better." He turned and walked away before she could respond. Victoria stood frozen, those 4 words echoing in her skull like grenades. Just live better. As if her entire existence, the empire she'd built, the wealth she'd accumulated, the control she'd achieved, amounted to not living at all. As if this man in a minimum wage uniform saw through everything she'd spent 35 years constructing. Rick touched her elbow. "Chen, your car's waiting." She couldn't move, couldn't stop watching Daniel Morrison disappear down the corridor. Then a child's voice cut through the haze. "Dad! Dad! I finished all my homework." A little girl ran up to Daniel, 8 years old, backpack bouncing, face lit up with pride only children can generate. Emma, the daughter who waited in cafeterias. Daniel scooped her up without hesitation, and for just a moment his entire demeanor changed. The walls came down, the military bearing softened. He became just a father picking up his kid after work. Emma's voice carried down the hallway. "Was it a busy night?" Daniel's response was quieter, but Victoria caught it. "Just another shift, sweetheart." He put Emma down, took her hand, and they walked toward the exit together. Father and daughter, his hand on her head, her backpack bouncing with each step. A complete unit of 2, needing nothing from the world except each other. Something twisted in Victoria's chest. She couldn't name it, didn't want to name it, but it felt uncomfortably like envy. Rick cleared his throat. She's adorable, Victoria corrected automatically. He, he has a daughter. Right. Rick was watching her watch them leave. Should I have the car brought around? Victoria nodded, let Rick guide her toward the exit, but her mind was already spinning. Daniel Morrison, combat medic, single father, security guard. A man who'd saved her life and then told her to live better, as if she wasn't already living at maximum capacity, as if there was some other way to exist she'd missed entirely. The thought should have been absurd. Was absurd. Victoria Chen didn't take life advice from security guards. Except the words wouldn't stop echoing. Just live better, just live better, just live better. 2 hours later, Victoria sat at the head of a conference table in Chen Industries headquarters, surrounded by 12 board members who'd known her since she was 23 and hungry enough to eat glass. Thomas Kerr, in his 60s and skeptical of everything, led the charge. Victoria, we're concerned. This is the second serious incident in your family in 5 years. Victoria's spine straightened despite the pain in her ribs. My father's stroke was not an incident, Thomas. It was a medical emergency. But your single car crash alone at 11 p.m. on a Thursday? Thomas spread his hands. The optics are concerning. Shareholders are asking questions. The media is circling. We need to address this. Sarah Lim, the only other woman on the board and usually Victoria's ally, spoke gently. We're not questioning your competence. We're asking if you need support. Time off. This company will survive a few weeks without you at the helm. Victoria felt her walls going up higher, concrete reinforcing steel. They were circling like predators sensing weakness. Take time off meant step aside. Step aside meant someone else takes control. Someone else takes control meant everything she'd built could crumble. I'm fine. Q3 earnings are up 23%. The DoD contract is signed. We're launching 3 new products next quarter. Thomas interrupted. You're deflecting. This board cares about you, Victoria, not just as our CEO, but as a person. If you're struggling, I'm not struggling. Her voice came out ice cold, the tone that ended arguments and closed deals and made grown men step back. I made a choice to save a child's life. I would make the same choice again. That's not weakness. That's being human. The words felt hollow even as she said them, being human. When was the last time she'd felt human? When was the last time she'd done something that didn't serve the company, the brand, the empire? When was the last time she'd done something just because it was right? Daniel Morrison's face floated in her memory again. The steadiness in his eyes, the way he'd held her hand without hesitation, without calculation, just pure human connection in a moment of crisis. No agenda, no angle, just help freely given. The board meeting dragged on another hour. Victoria deflected, controlled, managed. By the time they adjourned, she'd won. No medical leave, no stepping aside. Business as usual. The victory felt emptier than usual. Rick followed her back to her office, closed the door, and spoke in the voice he used when they were alone and honesty was required. I did more digging on Daniel Morrison. Victoria looked up from her laptop. I told you not to. I didn't use company resources, just public records. He paused. He was Army, combat medic. Discharged 5 years ago. Victoria's fingers stopped typing. Rick continued. His wife died in a car accident while he was overseas. Raised his daughter alone since then. That's why he works nights, so he can be there for Emma during the day. Silence filled the office. Victoria felt something cracking in her chest, small fissures in walls she'd thought were impenetrable. Why are you telling me this? Because you told him to just live better, and I think maybe you should know who you said that to. Rick left. Victoria sat alone in her corner office, surrounded by awards and accolades and proof of success, staring at Chicago's skyline and feeling like the loneliest person in the world. She pulled up Google, typed Daniel Morrison Army. Nothing came up. Tried combat medic Chicago Sarah Morrison. Found an obituary from 5 years ago. Sarah Morrison, age 33, beloved wife and mother, died in tragic accident. Survived by husband Daniel Morrison, deployed overseas, and daughter Emma Morrison, age 3. Victoria read the obituary 3 times, tried to imagine what it felt like to be overseas, fighting a war, and get news that your wife was dead. Your 3-year-old daughter was motherless. Your entire world had ended while you were 10,000 miles away saving strangers. Then she imagined that man, 5 years later, working a security guard job to be present for his daughter, sleeping while she was at school, picking her up every afternoon, making dinner, helping with homework, tucking her in, then going to work all night while she slept, living a life of pure sacrifice without complaint, without glory, without anyone knowing who he'd been or what he'd given up. And she'd told him to just live better. She'd treated him like hired help. She'd asked him to stay silent so her reputation wouldn't be complicated by association with him. Victoria closed her laptop, pressed her palms against her eyes, and let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. She wasn't sure which. Wasn't sure it mattered. For the first time in years, she felt something other than controlled. She felt ashamed. Friday afternoon, Daniel picked Emma up from Woodlawn Elementary like every other Friday, except Emma was practically vibrating with excitement. She ran to his car, backpack bouncing, face glowing. Dad, guess what? Daniel opened the passenger door. What, kiddo? Emma scrambled in, words tumbling out faster than breath. Ms. Martinez said Chen Industries donated a whole new computer lab to our school. Every classroom gets tablets and a coding program. And everything. Daniel went very still. His hands stayed on the steering wheel, but his mind was racing. Chen Industries, Victoria Chen's company. The woman who'd asked him to keep quiet, who'd made it clear she didn't want association with him. That Victoria Chen, Emma kept talking, oblivious to her father's silence. Isn't that amazing? The lady you saved, her company did that. They're putting up a banner and everything. Miss Martinez says it's going to help hundreds of kids learn technology. Daniel looked through the windshield at the school building, where maintenance workers were already hanging a banner. Thank you, Chen Legacy Foundation. Big letters, bright colors, visible from the street. Emma tugged his sleeve. Dad, do you think she's nice, the lady? Daniel started the car, pulled away from the curb, chose words carefully. I think she pays her debts differently. What does that mean? It means people show gratitude in their own way, sometimes with words, sometimes with actions. Emma considered this with the seriousness only 8-year-olds could bring to philosophical questions. I think both matter. Daniel smiled despite the complicated feelings churning in his chest. You're smarter than most adults, you know that? I have a good teacher. The compliment hit harder than Emma knew. Daniel drove them home through Chicago traffic. Processing. Victoria Chen hadn't thanked him directly, but she'd made sure Emma's school benefited, made sure hundreds of kids got resources they needed. Was that genuine gratitude? Guilt? PR? Part of him was angry. Why not just say thank you like a normal person? Why make everything a chess move? But another part, the part that had spent 5 years learning to see past surface actions to underlying motivations, respected it. She was helping kids, not making it about herself, not turning his heroism into her PR opportunity, just quietly doing something good. Maybe that counted for something. Saturday, Daniel took Emma to the library. She checked out 5 books, all about doctors and nurses. Sunday morning, she drew more pictures of people helping people. Sunday afternoon, Jake came over with Rosa and their kids, and they all went to Grant Park. Emma played with Jake's daughter while Daniel and Jake watched from a bench. Jake broke the comfortable silence. You gonna tell me how you're really doing? Daniel didn't pretend not to understand. I'm fine. Brother, your wife died 5 years ago. You work nights. You never date. You don't have friends except me. That's not fine. That's surviving. What's the difference? Jake turned to look at him directly. Fine means you're healing. Surviving means you're bleeding slow. Daniel watched Emma on the playground, laughing with complete freedom, and felt the familiar guilt twist in his stomach. I wasn't there when Sarah needed me. I was saving strangers in a desert while my wife was dying on a Chicago street. Emma lost her mother because I chose duty over family. That's bullshit, and you know it. Is it? Because it feels pretty fucking true from where I'm sitting. Wish Jake's voice went quiet, the tone he used when dropping truth bombs. You can't save everyone, Dan. and you can't punish yourself forever for being human. Sarah wouldn't want this. She'd want you to actually live. The words echoed uncomfortably. Just live better. Live. Actually live. Daniel changed the subject. How's work? Jake led him. They talked about the hospital, about Emma's school, about nothing important. But the words lingered. You can't punish yourself forever. As if punishment had an expiration date. As if someday the guilt would just stop. Sunday night, Daniel's shift started at 10. Emma came with him, settled into the cafeteria with homework and hot chocolate. By midnight, Daniel was making his rounds, checking doors, nodding to nurses, doing the job that paid rent and kept Emma fed. Dr. Reyes found him near the ER. Morrison, got a minute? They stepped into a supply closet converted to break room. Privacy not guaranteed, but better than nothing, Doctor. Reyes studied Daniel with the intensity of someone trained to see past what patients said to what their bodies revealed. I heard what you did Thursday night with Victoria Chen. Just helped out, sir. I've been an ER doctor for 25 years. What you did wasn't helping out. That was advanced trauma stabilization. That was someone with serious training, keeping a critical patient alive through pure competence. Daniel stayed quiet. Let the silence do the work. Dr. Reyes continued, I looked at your file. Says previous employment was healthcare. Doesn't say what kind. That's correct. Morrison, were you military medical? Beat, 2 beats, 3. I'd prefer to keep my past private, Dr. Reyes. The doctor nodded slowly, respect in his eyes. Understood, but Morrison, if you ever want to go back to that work, I could use someone like you. We're always short on paramedics, good ones especially. You'd have to get certified, but with your background, it'd be fast. I'm exactly where I need to be. Okay, Dr. Reyes headed for the door, paused. But Morrison, don't hide your light under a bushel. People need to see what you're capable of, especially your daughter. She should know her dad's a hero. Daniel didn't respond. Let Dr. Reyes leave. Sat alone in the break room with bad coffee and complicated thoughts. Hero. The words sat wrong. Heroes were the ones who didn't come home. Heroes were the 23 men he'd saved, but the hundreds he couldn't. Heroes weren't men who worked security jobs and let their combat careers die quiet deaths. He finished his shift at 6, collected Emma from the cafeteria, drove home through sunrise. Emma fell asleep in the car, head against the window, completely trusting. Daniel carried her inside, tucked her into bed without waking her, then stood in his kitchen, staring at Chicago through a window too small to contain the view. Somewhere in this city, Victoria Chen was waking up in her penthouse, drinking coffee that cost more than his daily wage, preparing for another day of building empires and controlling narratives. Living a life so different from his, they might as well be different species. But they'd shared something Thursday night, that moment when death was close and pretense didn't matter. When he was just a medic and she was just someone who needed help, and neither of their histories mattered at all. Pure human connection, stripped of context. He wondered if she remembered that, or if she'd already filed it away under crisis managed. Move on. Monday morning, Rick Stevens knocked on Victoria's office door with news she both expected and dreaded. The hospital gala is in 3 weeks, annual charity event. Your family foundation is the primary sponsor. Victoria didn't look up from her laptop. I know, I go every year. Security detail will be provided by Mercy General's staff. Victoria's fingers froze on the keyboard. Rick's voice was carefully neutral. Daniel Morrison will probably be there. She looked up. Rick's face revealed nothing, but they'd worked together too long for her to miss the subtext. This was an opportunity, a chance to talk to him properly, a chance to maybe apologize for treating him like he was invisible. I'll think about it. Rick left. Victoria stared at the gala invitation on her desk. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to figure out what to say to a man who'd saved her life and then told her to live better. 3 weeks to decide if she even wanted to treat him. Her phone buzzed. Text from Thomas Kerr. Board meeting Wednesday. Quarterly projections. Be prepared. Victoria deleted the text, looked back at the gala invitation, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not of death, she'd faced that already. Fear of being seen, really seen. The way Daniel Morrison had seen her in that hospital corridor. seen past the armor, to the scared girl underneath who'd built walls so high nobody could reach her. Maybe that was the point. Maybe nobody was supposed to reach her. Maybe living better meant living alone, but powerful, safe, controlled. Except she remembered his hand holding hers, the way he'd promised sunrise without hesitation, the way he'd looked at Emma like she was the entire world contained in 45 pounds of 8-year-old determination. And Victoria wondered for the first time in her adult life what it felt like to be someone's entire world, to be chosen, to be worth sacrifice. The thought terrified her more than the crash had. 3 weeks passed like water through fingers. Victoria attended board meetings, launched product lines, gave interviews where she smiled and said recovery was progressing well. At night, alone in her penthouse, she stared at the gala invitation and wondered what she'd say when she saw him again. The Mercy General Annual Charity Gala fell on a Saturday in late October, when Chicago's autumn turned cold enough to remind people winter was coming. Victoria stood in her bedroom at 6 p.m., stylist hovering, makeup artist touching up foundation, trying to look like someone who belonged in a midnight blue gown that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Rick appeared in the doorway. "Car's here, you ready?" Victoria studied her reflection. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect dress. She looked like the CEO the world expected. "Do I look approachable?" Rick's eyebrows rose. In 8 years, she'd never asked that question. "You're asking me that?" "The board thinks I'm too cold. Media calls me Ice Queen. Maybe they're right." "Victoria, you're brilliant and driven. That's not cold. That's successful." She turned from the mirror. Daniel Morrison didn't see success. He saw someone afraid of owing anything to anyone. Rick's expression shifted, something like understanding crossing his face. "So tonight you thank him. Properly. Face to face. Human to human." Victoria nodded, but anxiety crawled up her spine like spiders. Human to human. She'd forgotten how to do that somewhere between building an empire and burying her mother's abandonment under layers of achievement. Daniel stood in the hospital security office at 7 p.m., adjusting his formal uniform, while Jake watched with barely concealed amusement. The gala meant all security staff wore dress versions of their standard issue, pressed shirts, polished shoes, ties that felt like nooses. Jake straightened Daniel's collar. "Big night, all the rich folks in one place." "Just another shift." "Chen's gonna be there." Daniel's hand stilled on his tie. "I know." "You gonna talk to her?" "Only if someone needs medical attention." Jake laughed, but his eyes held concern. "Brother, you're impossible. She's been asking about you." Daniel's head snapped up. "What?" "Hospital grapevine. Apparently she's called Dr. Reyes twice, asked questions about the night of her accident, about you specifically." Daniel finished with his tie, grabbed his radio, probably just covering liability bases. Or maybe she's trying to figure out how to apologize without looking weak. "Not my problem." Jake shook his head. "You know what your problem is? You've got walls so high you can't see over them anymore. Not everyone's gonna hurt you like..." Daniel's phone rang. Emma on video call, staying with Rosa for the night. Her face filled the screen, gap-toothed smile bright. "Dad, you look handsome." Some of the tension left Daniel's shoulders. "Thanks, Em. You being good for Mrs. Martinez?" "Always. Say hi to the computer lab lady if you see her." Daniel smiled despite himself. "Will do, kiddo." He ended the call, looked at Jake. "I'm not building walls. I'm just being realistic. People like Victoria Chen don't actually see people like me. We're background noise." "Then why'd she donate to Emma's school?" Daniel had no answer for that. The gala transformed Mercy General's grand ballroom into something from a different world. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, servers carrying champagne on silver trays. 300 guests in designer clothes, politicians mixing with doctors, mixing with donors, everyone performing the careful dance of wealth and influence. Daniel stood near the main entrance with 2 other security guards, checking credentials, directing guests, staying invisible. Professional smile. "Yes, sir. Right this way, ma'am." The role required disappearing into the background, which suited him fine. Then Victoria's town car pulled up to the red carpet. She emerged like something from a movie, midnight blue gown catching light, photographers' cameras flashing. Poised, powerful, every inch the billionaire CEO. But Daniel saw what cameras couldn't, the slight hesitation before she smiled, the way her hand gripped her clutch too tight, the micro-expression of someone performing confidence rather than feeling it. Their eyes met across 50 feet of crowd and camera flashes. 1 second. 2. Something passed between them, electric and complicated. Then she looked away first, let herself be swept into the ballroom by assistants and admirers. Daniel returned to checking badges, but his awareness tracked her movement through the room like sonar. Couldn't help it. Combat training made you notice threats, and Victoria Chen felt dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with weapons. By 9 p.m., the speeches had started. Victoria took the stage, spotlight bright, and delivered remarks about healthcare access and community support. Her voice carried authority, perfect cadence, practiced pauses for applause. She announced a $5 million pledge from Chen Legacy Foundation for emergency services expansion. The room erupted in approval. Daniel watched from the back, noting details others missed. She gripped the podium, edges white-knuckled. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She was performing, not present. Gave speeches like someone going through motions because the script demanded it. He wondered if anyone else could see how lonely she looked up there. 9:23 p.m. The lights flickered once, twice. Fire alarms shrieked through speakers, cutting off Victoria mid-sentence. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Someone shouted from the left side of the ballroom, "Help! Someone help!" Panic started spreading. Daniel was already moving, muscle memory overriding thought. He cut through the crowd like water finding cracks, arrived at a cluster of people backing away from something on the floor. Elderly man, late 60s, collapsed near the dessert table. Face blue, clutching chest, not breathing. Daniel dropped to his knees, checked carotid pulse. Nothing. No breath. Cardiac arrest. His hands moved automatically, interlocking fingers over sternum, beginning compressions. Hard. Fast. Counting under his breath. Someone call 911. Now. Another security guard radioed for ambulance. Daniel continued. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. Check for pulse. Nothing. Again. 30 compressions. His arms burned, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. This was what his hands were built for. 45 seconds. 1 minute. The crowd had gone silent, watching this security guard perform CPR with the precision of someone who'd done it in worse conditions. Dr. Reyes appeared, medical bag in hand, dropped it beside Daniel. "What have we got?" Daniel didn't break rhythm. "Cardiac arrest, 90 seconds, no pulse yet." They worked together, synchronized. Dr. Reyes pulled out a portable defibrillator, charged it. "On my mark, clear." Electric shock. The man's body jerked. Daniel immediately resumed compressions. Another shock. More compressions. Then a gasp. Coughing. Eyes fluttering. The man was breathing. Paramedics burst through doors, took over, loaded him onto a stretcher. Dr. Reyes stood, helped Daniel up. "He's stable. Because of you." Daniel stepped back, ready to fade into shadows where security guards belonged. But applause started. 1 person, 2, then the entire room. Standing ovation, cameras turning, phones recording. Daniel's instinct screamed run, but he stood there, uncomfortable, looking for an exit. Then he felt it. Eyes on him. Looked up. Victoria stood on stage, frozen, staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Recognition. Shock. Something deeper. Their gazes locked across the ballroom, and Daniel saw the exact moment understanding hit her. This wasn't just a security guard who'd gotten lucky twice. This was someone with serious training. Someone who'd hidden an entire identity. A guest grabbed Daniel's arm. "Young man, you saved his life." Daniel deflected. "Paramedics did the real work, sir." But cameras were already turning, phones recording, media sensing a story. Security guard saves life at charity gala. Same guard who'd saved Victoria Chen a month ago. Questions starting to form. Who is this guy? What's his background? Why does a security guard have combat-level medical skills? Daniel caught Jake's eye across the room. Jake's expression said what Daniel was thinking. "You're blown." Victoria cut the gala short, told Rick she needed to leave immediately. Her mind was spinning. She'd watched Daniel work on that man with the same precision he'd used on her. Watched trained professionals defer to him. Watched him command a crisis situation like someone born to it. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a security guard with basic first aid training. This was someone with deep expertise, hidden behind a minimum wage uniform. By 10:30 p.m., Victoria was in a Chen Industries conference room with Rick, demanding answers. I need Daniel Morrison's complete personnel file, everything Mercy General has. Rick hesitated. Victoria, it's almost 11. HR won't. I'm on the hospital board. Wake someone up. 20 minutes later, Patricia Wong, Mercy General's HR director, arrived in sweatpants and exhaustion, carrying a manila folder she clearly didn't want to surrender. Ms. Chen, this is highly irregular. Employee privacy. Victoria's voice went cold, the tone that closed billion-dollar deals. Get it. Patricia disappeared, returned with a second folder, thicker than the first. Employee requested military service details remain confidential per privacy laws. Full records available only to HR director and for emergency background checks. Victoria held out her hand. I'll take both. Patricia placed them on the table, left reluctantly. Victoria opened the public file first. Basic information. Name, age, position, hire date. Previous employment listed simply as healthcare worker. Emergency contact. Emma Morrison, daughter, age 8. The sealed file was different. Victoria's hands trembled as she pulled documents free. United States Army personnel record. Name, Daniel James Morrison. Military occupational specialty, 68W Combat Medic Service. Dates, 2009-2019, 10 years. Deployments, Afghanistan, 3 tours, 2012, 2015, 2018. Decorations and awards. Silver Cross for Valor, 2017. Purple Heart, 2016. Army Commendation Medal, X3. Combat Medical Badge. Afghanistan Campaign. Medal with Campaign Stars. Victoria read the Silver Cross citation 3 times, each reading making her chest tighter. On August 15, 2017, during Taliban ambush near Kandahar province, Specialist Daniel Morrison repeatedly exposed himself to enemy fire to evacuate 23 wounded soldiers. Despite sustaining injuries himself, Specialist Morrison performed emergency field surgeries under direct fire, refusing evacuation until all casualties were secured. His actions directly resulted in 23 lives saved. A newspaper clipping was paperclipped to the citation. Photo of younger Daniel, maybe 33, in dress uniform with medals on his chest. Eyes harder than now. Haunted. The headline, Hero Medic Saves 23 in Afghanistan Ambush. Victoria kept reading. Discharge papers. Reason, honorable. Family hardship. Date, October 2019. Notes section had one line. Spouse deceased, sole guardian of minor child. Another document. Death certificate. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison died September 12, 2019. Cause motor vehicle accident. Survived by husband Daniel Morrison, deployed. Daughter Emma Morrison, age 3. The timeline constructed itself in Victoria's mind. Daniel overseas, saving strangers in a desert. Wife back home, raising their 3-year-old daughter alone. Car accident. Sarah dead. Daniel gets the notification while still deployed. Finishes his tour because that's what soldiers do. Comes home to a daughter who'd lost her mother and a life that no longer existed. Then he'd made the choice. Left the army. Left his identity as a combat hero. Took a security job that paid barely enough to cover rent. Worked nights so he could be there for Emma during the day. Gave up everything to be the parent she needed. And Victoria had told him to just live better. Rick was reading over her shoulder. Jesus Christ. Victoria's voice came out strangled. He was in Afghanistan when his wife died. He gave up being a decorated war hero to become a single father working minimum wage. And I treated him like... Victoria couldn't finish. The words stuck in her throat. Like hired help. Like he was beneath her. Like his heroism was an inconvenience to her carefully controlled narrative. Rick spoke carefully. What are you going to do? Victoria stood, paced to the window overlooking Chicago's nighttime skyline. I'm going to tell the truth. Publicly. Victoria, he specifically requested privacy. He deserves recognition. The world needs to see Rick cut her off, sharp. No, listen to yourself. This isn't about what you think he deserves. This is about what he wants. You can't make yourself feel better by putting him in a spotlight he explicitly avoided. The words hit like a slap. Victoria turned. I'm trying to do the right thing. Then talk to him first. Ask what he wants. Don't make this decision for him just because it eases your guilt. Victoria sank into a chair. Rick was right. Of course he was right. She'd spent a month feeling guilty about how she'd treated Daniel, and her first instinct was to make a grand gesture that served her need for redemption more than his actual wishes. What do I do? Rick's voice softened. You go to the hospital tomorrow. Find him. Apologize face to face. Not in front of cameras, not with PR teams, just you and him and the truth. Monday morning, 6 a.m., Victoria waited in Mercy General's lobby wearing jeans and a sweater. No designer clothes, no makeup, just herself, raw and terrified, waiting for Daniel's shift to end. He appeared at 6:15, exhaustion written in every line of his body, saw her, stopped. Confusion crossed his face. Victoria stood. Hi, what are you doing here? I wanted to apologize in person, not on camera, just to you. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. You didn't need to come all the way here. Yes, I did. Victoria gestured to the empty cafeteria. Can we talk? 5 minutes. Daniel nodded, led her to a table far from anyone else. They sat across from each other, and Victoria realized she'd never been this nervous closing a billion-dollar deal. She started with the truth. I read your file last night, after the gala. I know who you are, what you did in Afghanistan, what you gave up for Emma. Daniel's jaw tightened. You had no right. I know, you're right, but I needed to understand why a combat medic was working as a security guard, why someone who saved 23 soldiers under fire was checking doors at night. And now you know. Victoria leaned forward. When I told you to just live better, I thought I was dismissing someone beneath me, someone whose opinion didn't matter. But you weren't beneath me. You were, her voice cracked. You've sacrificed everything, your career, your identity, your own grief. All for Emma. And I have nothing. I built an empire, but I didn't build a life. Daniel studied her with those steady combat medic eyes that saw past surfaces to underlying damage. What do you want from me, Victoria? Hearing him use her first name felt intimate, dangerous. I want to apologize, properly, for treating you like you were invisible. Okay, apology accepted. I want to do more. I want to... Why? Daniel's voice stayed gentle but cut straight through her prepared speech. Why now? You had 3 weeks. Could have called, could have come by, but you didn't. Victoria felt tears threatening, forced them back. I was afraid. Of what? Of admitting I was wrong, of showing weakness. Daniel's expression softened fractionally. You don't owe me anything. You never did. That's my job. Not security, helping people. That's who I am. I don't keep score. But don't you want recognition? Don't you want people to know what you've done? No, the word was absolute. I want to pick up my daughter and go home. That's all I want. Victoria felt something crumbling inside her. That's not all you deserve. Daniel stood, preparing to leave. Maybe, but it's all I'm asking for. Victoria stood too, desperate. What if I could help Emma? College fund, medical expenses, anything? No. Please, let me... Miss Chen. Daniel's voice was kind but firm. We're fine. Silence stretched between them. Then Daniel's expression shifted slightly, something like sympathy crossing his features. But if you really want to help, there are vets at support groups who need housing, employment, families here who can't afford medical bills. Help them. Victoria grabbed onto the lifeline. Yes, okay, I can do that. Not as PR, not with cameras, just help. I will. Daniel picked up his jacket. My shift's over. Emma's waiting. Victoria found herself saying his name. Daniel. He stopped. Thank you for everything, including this conversation. He nodded left. Victoria stood alone in the cafeteria, feeling more lost than she'd felt since her mother walked out 23 years ago. Tuesday morning, the world exploded. Victoria was in her office when Rick burst through the door, face pale. We have a problem. He turned on the television. News anchor, serious expression, footage rolling. Breaking news. Chicago billionaire Victoria Chen was saved not once but twice by the same man, a security guard with a secret past. Phone video from the gala played, showing Daniel performing CPR with professional precision. Cut to interview with a gala guest. He was incredible, like he'd done this 1,000 times, military precision. Social media hashtags scrolled across the screen, shot "Who's Daniel Morrison" trending. Reddit threads dissecting his background. Someone had found the 2017 article about the Afghanistan ambush. Holy shit, this is the same guy who saved 23 soldiers. Headlines appearing in real time. Did Victoria Chen try to hide her hero's story? Billionaire's gratitude, silence and secrecy. The security guard who saved a CEO, and she never said thank you. Victoria felt her stomach drop. How did they find out? Rick's voice was grim. Gala guests posted videos. Media connected the dots. Now they're asking why you never mentioned him. Why you stayed silent about being saved by a war hero. Victoria's phone exploded with notifications. Board members calling, shareholders demanding statements, media requesting interviews. The narrative she tried to control was spinning wildly out of reach. That afternoon, Chen Industries held an emergency board meeting. The temperature in the conference room could have frozen water. Thomas Kerr led the attack, voice cold with anger. Victoria, this is a disaster. Stock is down 8%. Customers are threatening boycotts. Chen Industries doesn't value veterans. That's the headline. Sarah Lim looked genuinely hurt. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why hide that a decorated war hero saved your life? Victoria fought to keep her voice steady. I was respecting his privacy. He asked me not to talk about it. Thomas slammed a hand on the table. It doesn't look like respect. It looks like shame. Like you were embarrassed to be saved by a mere security guard. The words stung because they contained truth. Victoria had been embarrassed. Not of Daniel, but of needing help. Of being vulnerable. Of owing her life to someone she'd initially dismissed. Another board member spoke up. The optics are terrible. Media is destroying us. Unless you control this narrative, Thomas interrupted. We're discussing a vote of no confidence. The room went silent. Victoria felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. What? Sarah's voice was gentle but serious. Victoria, we care about you. But your judgment lately, the accident, the secrecy, now this backlash. We're concerned you're not in the right headspace to lead. Rick stood, surprisingly forceful. With respect, this board is overreacting. Victoria made the ethical choice. She prioritized Daniel Morrison's wishes over PR. That's integrity. Thomas turned on him. Rick, you're not... I'm COO. I have a voice. And I'm saying Victoria did the right thing, the hard thing. You want to throw her out for that? The room erupted in argument. Victoria sat at the head of the table, watching her empire threaten to crumble, and made a decision. She stood, voice cutting through chaos. I'll do a press conference. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., no script, no PR team, just me and the truth. Thomas's eyes narrowed. And say what? Everything. Why I didn't speak up. What Daniel told me. What I learned. She met each board member's gaze. And if the board wants me to step down after that, I will. The room went quiet. Sarah spoke first. Victoria, I'm serious. If my judgment is that compromised, maybe you're right. Maybe I need to step back, but not before I tell the truth. She walked out before anyone could argue, Rick following close behind. Across Chicago, Daniel Morrison was making dinner for Emma when his daughter's voice cut through the kitchen. Dad, Dad, you're on TV. He dropped the spatula, ran to the living room. News footage played across the screen, his face from the gala, his younger face from the 2017 Afghanistan article. Reporters discussing his heroism and Victoria's silence. Emma's eyes were wide with wonder and confusion. Everyone knows now. Daniel's phone had been exploding for hours. He'd turned it to silent. Now he picked it up, saw dozens of missed calls, messages from old army buddies, reporters requesting interviews, strangers on social media calling him a hero. Jake's text stood out. Turn on Channel 7. Emma climbed into his lap. This is good, right? Now people know you're a hero. Daniel wrapped his arms around his daughter, felt the familiar weight of responsibility and love. I didn't want this. Why not? Because it's not about me. It never was. Emma twisted to look at him, 8 years old and wiser than her age. Is the computer lab lady mad at you? I don't know, maybe. You should call her. Daniel almost laughing. It's complicated, Em. Emma gave him the look she'd perfected, the one that said adults overthought everything. She saved your life by being nice. You saved her life by being brave. That's not complicated. Before Daniel could respond, his phone rang. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. Mr. Morrison, this is Channel 7 News. We'd like to offer you an exclusive interview about... Daniel hung up, turned off his phone completely, held Emma tighter. Somewhere in this city, Victoria Chen was preparing to face cameras and tell truths she'd spent her life hiding. And Daniel knew, with the certainty of someone who'd survived enough chaos to recognize its patterns, that tomorrow would change everything. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. Part 3, Fianban Sua, Da So Press Conference Lab. Minimum 6 to 800, maximum 7,000 words. Friday morning, Victoria visited her father in the long-term care facility where he'd lived since his stroke. The room smelled like disinfectant and age. Her father sat in a wheelchair by the window, left side of his body still paralyzed, speech slurred, but eyes sharp. He gestured to the television, news coverage still playing clips from 2 days ago's press conference. Stupid, Victoria sat across from him. I know. Weak. Maybe. Her father's working hand clenched the armrest. Words came slow, difficult, but determined. I taught you. Never show weakness. Victoria felt tears threatening again. Seemed she couldn't stop crying lately. I know what you taught, Miyahami Dad. Build walls, control everything. Never need anyone. Never admit failure. Survive. Survive isn't the same as live. Her father's face twisted with frustration, trying to form words his damaged brain couldn't quite access. Finally, you threw away empire. I'm trying to find something more important than empire. Nothing more important. Victoria leaned forward, took his working hand. You're wrong, Mom knew it. That's why she left. She couldn't live in a world where success mattered more than connection. Her father's eyes went hard. They'd never discussed her mother's abandonment. It was the family shame, buried under achievement and wealth. Victoria pressed on. I'm 35 years old. I have $1 billion and 0 friends. I can't remember the last time I laughed without calculation. I built everything you wanted me to build, and I'm completely empty inside. Silence. Her father looked away, jaw working. Daniel Morrison has nothing except a daughter who adores him and a life built on actual values. And he's happier than I've ever been. Victoria squeezed his hand. So yes, I threw away the empire, and I'd do it again. Her father pulled his hand free, turned his wheelchair toward the window. Conversation over. Victoria stood, kissed his forehead, left. In the hallway, she finally let herself cry, grieving for the relationship they'd never have and the mother who'd escaped before Victoria could learn from her. The elevator ride down felt like descending through layers of her past. Childhood memories surfaced unbidden. Her father's office, always closed. Her mother's packed suitcase by the door that final morning. The note Victoria had found years later, hidden in her father's desk. I can't breathe in this life anymore. I'm sorry. Victoria had spent 23 years proving she could breathe in that life, could thrive in it, could become even more successful than her father. And she'd succeeded. Built an empire larger than his, made more money, achieved more recognition, and ended up just as alone. Her phone buzzed as she reached the lobby. Text from Patricia Wong at Mercy General. Ms. Chen, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Daniel Morrison submitted his resignation this morning. Victoria's stomach dropped. She called Patricia immediately. Effective immediately, Patricia explained, voice sympathetic. Media attention, he said. Can't do his job with cameras following him everywhere. Can't have Emma exposed to constant scrutiny. Victoria hung up, stared at her phone, felt panic rising. She'd destroyed his quiet life. Her confession had painted a target on him. made him visible when all he'd wanted was invisibility. He was running because of her. She called Rick. I need Daniel Morrison's home address. Victoria. Rick, please. 10 minutes later, she had it. Logan Square, modest apartment building. She drove there herself. No driver, no security, just her in jeans and a sweater knocking on a door she had no right to knock on. Daniel answered, surprise flashing across his face before settling into wariness. Ms. Chen. Victoria, please. He didn't invite her in. They stood in the doorway, awkward and tense. Victoria forced herself to speak. I heard you resigned. News travels fast. Because of the media attention? Because of what I said? Daniel's expression didn't change. Partly. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to destroy your privacy. I was trying to make yourself feel better. The words hit like a physical blow. Victoria stepped back. That's not, I wanted to honor you. By making a decision about my life without asking what I wanted. Daniel's voice stayed gentle, but the accusation landed hard. Victoria, you did the same thing twice. First, you asked me to stay silent for your comfort. Then you made me public for your redemption. Both times it was about what you needed. Victoria felt her throat closing. He was right. Completely right. You're right. I know. What can I do to fix it? Daniel leaned against the door frame, exhaustion written in every line. Nothing, it's done. Media will move on eventually. Until then, Emma and I lay low. I'll find another job. Somewhere quieter. Desperation made Victoria's voice crack. Don't leave. Please, I'll issue a statement. Tell them to leave you alone. I'll hire security. Whatever you need. I don't want your money or your statements. I want my quiet life back. That's not possible now. Emma's voice called from inside the apartment. Dad, who's at the door? Daniel glanced back. Just a minute, Em. To Victoria. I need to go. Wait, please, can we talk? Properly, not like this. Daniel studied her, something shifting in his expression. Not forgiveness, more like recognition of shared damage. Come by the foundation office Monday. 1 p.m. We'll talk then. The door closed. Victoria stood in the hallway shaking. She'd come to apologize and somehow made things worse. Pattern of her life. Good intentions paved with control issues and inability to actually listen. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. Her press conference had been meant to honor Daniel. Instead, it had driven him away. Another person she'd hurt while trying to help. Her phone rang. Rick. The board wants an emergency meeting. They're threatening to... Victoria cut him off. Tell them no. I'm done with board meetings. I meant what I said yesterday. I'm stepping back. Victoria, they're your company. They're your company now. You're CEO. Make the decisions. She hung up, stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, saw her mother's eyes looking back. The same fear, the same realization that the life you'd built was a cage. The difference was her mother had run. Victoria was trying to stay and do the hard work of changing. She drove home, called Rick again. The Veteran Fund, I needed operational immediately, full staff, real programs, everything Daniel suggested. Rick's voice was careful. Victoria, these things take time, months to set up properly. I don't have months. I have however long it takes for Daniel Morrison to leave Chicago. Make it happen. Victoria, Rick, please, this is the only thing I can control right now. Let me control it. Silence, Then, okay, I'll make calls, but Victoria, you need to slow down. You're spiraling. I know, but sometimes you have to spiral all the way down before you can climb back up. She hung up, paced her penthouse until dawn broke over Lake Michigan, and wondered when she'd become the kind of person who destroyed everything she touched. The weekend passed in a blur of phone calls and planning. Rick assembled a team. Victoria signed checks. By Sunday night, they had office space rented, staff hired, initial programs outlined. 72 hours of manic energy poured into proving she wasn't just performing, that she could actually build something good. Sunday night, alone in her penthouse, Victoria pulled out a legal pad and wrote a letter she'd never send. Daniel, I don't know how to be a person who doesn't control everything. I don't know how to help without making it about me. I don't know how to apologize without making it worse. but I'm trying to learn. The foundation is real. The veteran programs are real. The housing, the employment services, the mental health support, all real, not PR, not redemption theater. Just an attempt to do what you told me. Live better. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I've earned that. But please don't leave Chicago because of me. Emma deserves stability. You deserve peace. I'll stay out of your way. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. V, she folded the letter, put it in a drawer, knew she'd never have the courage to give it to him. Monday arrived cold and gray, November wind promising winter. Victoria stood in the Chen Legacy Foundation offices, newly established in a renovated building near Pilsen, at 12:30 p.m., 30 minutes before Daniel was scheduled to arrive. If he arrived at all, the space looked good, professional but warm. Veterans already filling out housing applications in the waiting area, social workers conducting intake interviews, a library corner where kids could do homework, a small playground visible through back windows. Rick appeared at her elbow. You built this in 3 days. I had motivation. He might not come. I know. 1 p.m. arrived, no Daniel. Victoria's chest tightened. 1:15. She was starting to accept he wasn't coming when the door opened. Daniel walked in, took in the activity visible through glass walls. Staff setting up computers, veterans getting help, social workers talking with families. His expression remained neutral, but Victoria saw the flicker of surprise. They went to a conference room, sat across from each other. Victoria slid a folder across the table, hands shaking slightly. Employment and housing programs for veterans, mental health services, job training, everything you suggested last week. Fully funded, operational as of today. Daniel opened the folder, scanned the contents. Victoria watched his face, trying to gauge reaction. He read slowly, carefully, checking details. Finally, he closed the folder, met her eyes. You did this in 3 days? I have resources and motivation. He kept the folder closed, hands flat on top of it. Waymo, because you were right about everything. And I need to prove I'm not just performing. I'm actually trying to change. Change doesn't happen in 3 days. I know, but it has to start somewhere. Victoria leaned forward. Daniel, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to do something good with the power I have. And I need help from someone who actually knows what veterans need. You want me to consult? I want you to co-direct the program with me. Daniel's eyebrows rose. What? Victoria pulled out a second folder. Employment offer. Salary triple what he'd made at the hospital. Flexible hours. Health insurance for Emma. Part-time, 20 hours a week. You'd help design programs, you meet with veterans, make sure we're actually helping instead of just throwing money around. She paused, gathered courage. Emma could come here after school. We have a library, art room, small playground out back. She'd be safe, you'd be close. She could do homework while you work. Daniel stared at the offer letter like it might detonate. Victoria, I'm a security guard. I don't have experience with. You have the only experience that matters. You're one of them. You know what it's like to transition from combat to civilian life, to carry trauma nobody else can see, to need help but not know how to ask. Silence stretched between them. Victoria waited, barely breathing. She'd put everything into this moment. If he said no, she'd respect it, but please let him say yes. One condition. Hope flared in her chest. Anything. Daniel's eyes locked onto hers, serious and unwavering. Don't put me on a pedestal. Don't call me a hero. Don't use me for PR. I'm just a guy trying to help other guys. That's all. Deal. They shook hands. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but connection. Possibility. The sense that maybe broken people could build something whole together. Daniel's grip was firm, calloused, real. Victoria felt grounded for the first time since the accident. When can you start? She asked. Give me a week. Need to settle things with Emma. Make sure she's comfortable with the change. Of course, take whatever time you need. Daniel stood, picked up both folders. I'll read through these tonight. Have notes by next Monday. Thank you. He paused at the door. Victoria. This? He gestured at the office, the programs, everything. If it's real, if you're serious, this could actually help people. It's real, I promise. He nodded, left. Victoria sat alone in the conference room, feeling lighter than she'd felt in weeks. Not fixed, not forgiven, but maybe possibly on the right path. The next 6 months unfolded like a time-lapse photograph of two lives slowly intertwining. November became December. Daniel started at the foundation with careful distance, professional boundaries firmly in place. He interviewed veterans, assessed needs, designed intake protocols. Victoria watched him work with quiet competence. The same focus he'd brought to saving her life now applied to rebuilding others. They worked in parallel at first. Victoria handled funding, board relations, political connections. Daniel handled programs, veteran outreach, hands-on services. They communicated through memos and brief check-ins, both maintaining careful space. Emma started coming to the foundation after school in mid-November. She'd set up at a library table, spreading homework and colored pencils like she'd done at the hospital cafeteria. But here, other kids came too, children of veterans in the programs. Emma made friends easily, her natural empathy drawing others to her. Victoria watched from a distance, didn't interfere, didn't try to force connection. But sometimes she'd bring Emma hot chocolate, leave it on the table with a smile. Emma always said thank you with the same gap-toothed grin. December brought the foundation's first housing project. 50 apartments for homeless veterans, move-ins starting before Christmas. Daniel worked 18-hour days that week, helping veterans move, fixing furniture, making sure everyone had food and basic supplies. Victoria showed up at 9 p.m. on December 20th with pizza for the volunteers. Found Daniel in an empty apartment, assembling a bed frame alone. Need help? He looked up, surprised. I've got it. I know, but 4 hands are faster than 2. They worked in silence for 20 minutes, the only sounds metal clicking into place and occasional instructions. When the frame was assembled, they sat on the floor, backs against the wall, sharing lukewarm pizza. You don't have to do this, Daniel finally said. Do what? The grunt work. You're the founder. You could be at board dinners or donor events. Victoria took a bite, chewed slowly. Those events don't change lives. This does. Daniel looked at her sidelong, something shifting in his expression. You really meant it when you stepped down. Yeah, I really did. They finished the pizza in comfortable silence. Outside, Chicago's December wind rattled windows. Inside, the apartment smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. January arrived with brutal cold and the foundation's employment program launch. Daniel ran weekly support groups for veterans transitioning to civilian work, resume workshops, his interview practice, job placement assistance. Victoria attended one session in late January, sitting in a circle of 12 veterans, feeling completely out of place in her designer jeans and cashmere sweater. But Daniel had invited her, and she'd promised to listen more than control. A veteran named Marcus spoke first. I got the job at the warehouse. Start Monday. First steady work in 3 years. The group applauded. Marcus's eyes were wet. Couldn't have done it without you all. Without this place, I was ready to give up. Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. You didn't give up. That's what matters. You kept showing up. Another veteran, Sarah, one of the few women in the program, raised her hand. I'm struggling with the nightmares. Can't sleep. It's affecting my training. Daniel didn't minimize or dismiss. Have you connected with Dr. Chen, our mental health coordinator? Yeah, she's helping, but I feel weak needing it. Victoria found herself speaking before thinking. I saw a therapist for the first time last month, after my accident, after everything that happened. I spent 35 years thinking needing help meant weakness. I was wrong. The room went quiet. All eyes on her. Victoria felt exposed but didn't retreat. Asking for help is the bravest thing any of us can do. It means admitting we can't fix everything alone, that we're human. Marcus nodded slowly. Ms. Chen's right. I didn't believe it until I walked through those doors. But she's right. After the meeting ended, Daniel walked Victoria to her car. February wind cut through their coats. Thank you for sharing today. Victoria shrugged. Just being honest. Still, these guys respect honesty. They can smell bullshit from a mile away. You showed up real. That matters. Something warm spread through Victoria's chest. Not attraction, not exactly. More like recognition. Like he saw her actually trying and it mattered to him. "How's Emma adjusting?" she asked. "Good. She likes coming here. Feels like she's part of something." "She is. She's the heart of this place. All the kids love her." Daniel smiled, rare and genuine. "She loves you too. Asked me yesterday if you were staying for dinner." Victoria's breath caught. "What did you tell her?" "I said I didn't know, but that maybe we could ask you sometime." "I'd like that." They stood by her car, snow starting to fall, Chicago's lights reflecting off clouds in orange and purple. "I should go," Victoria finally said. "Yeah, see you tomorrow?" "See you tomorrow." She drove home feeling lighter than air. February brought Emma's 9th birthday. Daniel had initially planned a small party at their apartment, just Emma's school friends and Jake's family. But Emma had other ideas. "Can Miss Victoria come?" she asked over breakfast one Saturday. Daniel looked up from his coffee. I'm sure she's busy. Can you ask her? Please?" Daniel texted Victoria that afternoon. Her response came immediately. "I wouldn't miss it. What does Emma like?" The party was chaos in the best way. 15 9-year-olds running through Daniel's modest apartment, pizza everywhere, balloon animals from Jake's brother-in-law who moonlighted as a party clown. Victoria arrived at 3 p.m. with a gift bag, nervous energy radiating off her. Emma saw her, squealed, ran across the room. "You came!" Victoria knelt down, let Emma hug her tight. "Of course I came. Wouldn't miss your birthday." "I'm 9 now." "I heard. That's very grown up." Emma dragged her over to her friends. "This is Miss Victoria. She works with my dad helping people." Victoria spent the next hour doing face painting with Emma's classmates, playing pin the tail on the donkey, laughing at bad jokes only children found funny. Daniel watched from across the room, something shifting in his chest. She fit here, in his tiny apartment with mismatched furniture and kid chaos everywhere. She fit. When Emma opened presents, Victoria's gift was last. A bicycle, blue with silver streamers and a basket on the front. Emma's eyes went huge. "This is the best present ever." She launched herself at Victoria, nearly knocking her over with the force of the hug. Victoria caught her, held tight, and Daniel saw tears in her eyes. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "You're so welcome, sweetheart." After the party wound down and parents collected their sugar high kids, Victoria stayed to help clean up. She and Daniel worked side by side, picking up paper plates and pop balloons while Emma tried out her new bike in the building's parking lot under Jake's supervision. "You didn't have to do that," Daniel said. "The bike? She needed one." "All of it. Coming here, doing face painting, playing games, you made her day." Victoria smiled, soft and genuine. "She made mine too." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence. When everything was sorted, they stood by the door, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Always." "Are we friends? Is that what this is?" Daniel considered. "Yeah, I think we are." "Good, because I've never really had friends before. Not real ones. Want to make sure I'm doing it right." Daniel laughed, surprised and delighted. "You're doing it right." March brought warmth and possibility. The foundation programs were thriving. 40 veterans housed, 35 employed, 20 receiving mental health services. Numbers that represented actual human lives improved. Late one night in the foundation office, Victoria and Daniel reviewed 6 months of results. Spreadsheets and reports covered the conference table, Chinese takeout containers between them. The building was empty except for them. Victoria leaned back, rubbed her eyes. "We're actually making a difference." "Yeah, we are." She looked at him across the desk. "I like this. Us. This work." "Me too." "Is it weird that I'm happier now than when I was CEO of a Fortune 500 company?" Daniel smiled. "Not weird. Honest." The moment stretched, loaded with unspoken feelings. Victoria broke it first, standing to gather her things. "I should go. Early meeting tomorrow with the housing developer." Daniel walked her to her car. March night air carried the scent of Lake Michigan and coming spring. They stood in the parking lot, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Again. Victoria took a breath, dove in. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you ever think about this being more than work?" His expression shifted. Surprise? Consideration? Something deeper underneath. More than friends, you mean? Yeah. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of grief still unprocessed. Victoria, I haven't dated since Sarah. I don't know if I can. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking if you feel it too. The pull? Yeah. Daniel met her eyes, vulnerability written across his face. Yeah, I feel it. Well, so what do we do about it? He took her hand, tentative, testing. She squeezed back. I don't know, but maybe we see where it goes? Slow, no pressure. Victoria smiled, genuine and unguarded. I can do slow. Good, because I'm terrified. Me too. They stood there holding hands like teenagers. Chicago's lights spread around them like fallen stars, and both felt something ancient and powerful. Hope. April and May passed in a blur of growing closeness. Coffee meetings became dinners. Work conversations became personal confessions. They didn't kiss, didn't rush, just spent time together, learning each other, building foundation for something more. One May evening, they took Emma kite flying at Grant Park. Emma ran ahead, kites soaring against blue sky while adults walked behind in comfortable silence. I talked to my therapist about you yesterday, Victoria said. Daniel glanced over, surprised. Yeah? She asked if I was falling in love. I said I thought maybe I was. She asked if that scared me. What did you say? That it terrifies me, but I'm trying to do it anyway. Daniel stopped walking, turned to face her fully. Victoria. I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. I just wanted you to know. I'm falling for you, have been for months, and I'm scared out of my mind. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe and alone. Daniel reached out, cupped her face in his hand, calloused palm warm against her cheek. I'm falling for you too. Relief flooded through her. Yeah? Yeah. Since February at least. Maybe earlier. You walked into Emma's birthday party looking terrified and determined, and I thought, this woman, this impossible, brave, beautiful woman. Victoria laughed, tearful. I wasn't brave, I was faking it. Same thing sometimes. Emma's voice called across the park. Miss Victoria, Dad, come hold the kite with me. They looked at each other, smiled, walked together toward Emma. When they took the kite string together, their hands touched, fingers intertwining naturally. Emma watched with satisfaction, then ran off to play with another kid nearby. She's not subtle, Daniel said. No, but she's not wrong either. Summer brought heat and deeper connection. They still hadn't kissed, hadn't taken that final step, but they were together constantly, working, eating meals, taking Emma to movies and museums in Navy Pier. One July evening after Emma was asleep, they sat on Daniel's tiny balcony, sharing a beer and watching Chicago's heat lightning flash in distant clouds. I need to tell you something, Daniel said, about Sarah. Victoria waited, gave him space. She called me 2 weeks before she died. I was on patrol near Kandahar. She said she couldn't do it alone anymore, that Emma needed me home, that she needed me home. His voice cracked. I told her to hang on 2 more months, that I'd be back soon, that she was strong enough. Silence filled with cricket songs and distant traffic. She wasn't. Or maybe she was, but she shouldn't have had to be. I chose duty over her, over Emma, and she died because of it. Victoria reached across, took his hand. You couldn't have known. But I should have listened, should have requested leave, should have put my family first just once, or Daniel. Listen to me. Victoria squeezed his hand hard. You're human. You made a choice that made sense at the time. You can't punish yourself forever for not knowing the future. 23 soldiers are alive because I stayed. Emma doesn't have a mother. How does that balance? It doesn't. It can't. But Daniel, she shifted to face him fully. You can't save everyone. And Emma doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be present, which you are, every single day. Daniel's face crumpled. Victoria pulled him into her arms, held him while he cried for the first time in 5 years. Great shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. She just held him, let him grieve, offered no platitudes or false comfort. When he finally quieted it, he pulled back, wiped his eyes. Sorry. Don't apologize. Not for that. Not ever. He looked at her, really looked, and saw someone who understood what it meant to carry impossible guilt, who knew what it felt like to destroy everything you touched while trying to help. Thank you. Always. That night before she left, they stood by her car in the summer darkness, cicadas singing, humidity thick enough to swim through. Can I kiss you? Daniel asked, voice rough from crying. Please. He kissed her like a man who'd forgotten how, tentative and gentle. She kissed back like a woman learning for the first time what connection felt like. Not performance, not calculation, just pure human want and need and hope. When they pulled apart, both were shaking. I should go, Victoria whispered. Yeah, but come back tomorrow? Always. August brought the announcement that changed everything. The Morrison Center for Community Healing would open in October, a comprehensive facility offering free healthcare, mental health services, veteran support, job training, and community programs. Chen Legacy Foundation's flagship project. Victoria made the announcement in early August, showed Daniel the architectural plans over dinner at a diner they'd adopted as theirs. This is your legacy. Has to have your name. Daniel argued. It should be the Chen Morrison Center, or just the community center, not just my name. Morrison Center, final decision. You saved my life. You built these programs. This is yours. Victoria, Daniel, please, let me do this one thing without arguing. He relented, knowing when he was beaten. The next 2 months blurred past in construction meetings and program planning. Daniel officially moved into Victoria's penthouse in September, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Moss got her own room with windows overlooking Lake Michigan. She decorated it with her drawings and the bicycle Victoria had given her, which she kept inside like a treasure. They were a family, imperfect, still healing, but together. October 10th arrived with falling leaves and crisp autumn air. The Morrison Center opening drew 500 people, politicians, veterans, families, media covering the story that had captivated Chicago for a year. Daniel stood backstage in a suit Victoria had helped him pick out, uncomfortable with attention, but accepting its necessity. Jake straightened his tie, pride evident in every gesture. You ready for this, brother? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Emma appeared, 9 years old in a navy dress Victoria had chosen with her, holding Victoria's hand. The sight struck Daniel with unexpected force, his daughter and the woman he loved, together, comfortable, like they'd always belonged together. Victoria saw his expression, smiled. You look terrified. I am terrified. Good, means you care. The ceremony began with speeches from politicians and donors. Dr. Reyes spoke about community health care. Then Victoria took the podium, and the crowd quieted. 1 year ago, I nearly died in a car accident. The person who saved me wasn't a surgeon or someone with wealth or power. He was a father working night shifts to be there for his daughter during the day. She looked directly at Daniel standing off stage. Daniel Morrison taught me something I'd spent 35 years running from. That real strength isn't control or wealth or power. It's showing up for people who need you. Being vulnerable enough to let them show up for you. Building community instead of empires. Her voice caught with emotion. This center exists because Daniel showed me what actually matters in life. It's named after him not because he wanted recognition, he didn't, but because he represents everything we should aspire to be. Humble, selfless, willing to do the hard work of healing. Applause erupted. Victoria gestured. Daniel Morrison, please join me. Emma pushed him forward. Go, Dad, they need to see you. Daniel walked onto stage, supremely uncomfortable, wishing he could disappear. Victoria handed him the microphone. 500 faces looking at him, cameras recording. He found Emma in the front row, let her smile ground him. I'm not good at speeches, better with heartbeats and blood pressure. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Daniel found his footing. A year ago, I thought I was living, providing for Emma, doing my getting through each day, but I was just surviving, just bleeding slowly and pretending the wounds had healed. He looked at Victoria, drew courage from her presence. Then I met someone who was also surviving, also bleeding. We were both terrified of actually being alive, of letting people close, of risking the pain that comes with real connection. His voice strengthened. But we learned something together. Strength isn't walls or control or pretending you don't need anyone. Strength is showing up even when you're scared, asking for help even when it feels like weakness, building something bigger than yourself because you believe the world can be better. He gestured at the building behind him. This center represents that belief, that we're stronger together than alone, that community heals, that everyone deserves a second chance. The applause built. Daniel stepped back, but Victoria pulled the wooden box from behind the podium. Inside, a medal, simple, beautiful, custom-made. Engraving read, "For Daniel Morrison, you promised sunrise. Thank you for keeping your promise." Victoria's hands trembled as she pinned it to his chest. "I know you hate being called a hero, but you gave me back my life, not just by saving me, by showing me how to actually live it." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't fade into shadows again. The world needs people like you. I need people like you." They stood inches apart, entire crowd watching. Daniel's voice came out quiet enough only she could hear. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise, Bado. I'm going to hold you to that." "Good." Iman ran onto stage holding her drawing, the one she'd refined over months. Stick figure Dad. Stick figure Victoria. Between them, a glowing heart labeled family. She held it up for the crowd. "Look what I made." The crowd melted into applause and cheers. Emma hugged Victoria first, fierce and tight, then pulled Daniel down into the embrace. 3 people on stage, cameras flashing, but none of that mattered compared to the feeling of being chosen, being family, being home. Later, after speeches ended and crowds dispersed and the center emptied for the night, Daniel found Victoria on the rooftop. Sunset painted Chicago in oranges and golds, the kind of sky that made promises worth keeping. She turned at his footsteps. "Hey, hey yourself," he joined her at the railing. "Hell of a day." "Yeah." She leaned into him, natural as breathing. "I meant what I said up there." "I know, I meant what I said too." Silence settled, comfortable and charged. Victoria broke it first, voice steady with decision. "I love you, I'm in love with you, fully, completely, terrifyingly, and I need you to know that." Daniel turned to face her, taking both her hands. "I love you too. Probably have been since you showed up at my apartment looking lost and determined." "So what happens now?" "Now we build this." He gestured between them. "The same way we built that center. With care, with intention, one day at a time." Victoria smiled through tears. "I can do one day at a time." "Good, because I'm not letting you go, ever." He pulled her close, kissed her like a man who'd finally stopped being afraid, and she kissed back like a woman who'd learned to be brave. Chicago's sunset wrapped around them, promise of tomorrow glowing on every horizon. They stood there long after the sun disappeared, holding each other under emerging stars, 2 people who'd survived their own private wars finally finding peace.